when you're a business owner, I think working for yourself for longer hours is still better than working for somebody else. Whenever I have fear of taking risk, I always build a spreadsheet and I divide up the risk in smaller buckets. Do I want to take a risk on this specific thing? Hey, you know what? This was in my head. This is actually not a big deal now that I've broken it down. And you can move on to the next thing. I think balance means different things for different people. If you're building something, you're spending that extra time for yourself as opposed to helping somebody else build their company. When you think of all the setbacks that you're going to face as a real estate investor, think of it as the price you pay to get coached on building that generational wealth and breaking that cycle, the generational wealth cycle.
You're listening to the number one real estate podcast in the world. We talk with real estate professionals all across North America about their wins, their losses, lessons, and stories help you win in your local market today. My name is Cody from Sheridan Street. I am not joined with Vikram Deal of the Real Estate Sales Academy. I have no idea where he is right now. This is on his it's on his calendar. He's supposed to be here. We're actually staying together, so I have zero clue where Vikram is. I'm a little concerned with him right now, but needless to say, we have a very, very special guest today. If this is your first time tuning into the RGN podcast, I want to say thank you. We've interviewed hundreds of real estate agents, teams, and professionals all across North America, really explaining their wins, losses, lessons, stories, really to help you, like I said, win in your local market today. If you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, I want to say thank you. We have tons of reviews on iTunes, and I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. The big thing before we intro our guest here, that I really want to say to anyone that is out there right now, if you are getting any value from the RGN podcast, I would encourage you to leave us a review. It helps us reach more real estate agents. I don't know, iTunes likes that type of stuff. So really appreciate that today. But today we have Palak Shah with us today from Open Spaces Capital, Open Spaces Women. Palak and I go way back to Taki Moore days, and we have had the opportunity to play in the same types of masterminds. We've had the opportunity to be coached and mentored by my really good friend, Sharant Srivatsa. We were actually recently at a event in Nashville together about a couple months back, where I think both of us just left that event being like, oh my goodness, there's so much more that we're capable of, so much more, we're able to do so much more. Palak, why don't you give our listeners a high-level Cliff Notes version of who you are, what you do, who you serve, and kind of like what you're up to in the Open Spaces Capital world, the Open Spaces Women world. Just kind of give us that 60 seconds high notes version of kind of what you're up to.
Sure. Well, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I'll take any opportunity to hang out with you, Cody. So
I love it.
And I hope Vikram's okay.
I hope he's okay too. He texted me. He did just text me, and he read one on the calendar. But regardless,
okay,
he's out.
Cool.
He's out now.
Yeah,
he's.
So my background, I was a mechanical engineer for 17 years, and it was amazing because I climbed the corporate ladder. I was working with really smart people. I was traveling the world. We had developed this very niche strategy on how to help factories increase their bottom lines. And so I would go from one country to another, different factories, teaching CEOs how to implement that strategy. And it was awesome until we had kids. So my husband and I decided to wait till our late 30s to have kids. And then we had kids, and I realized that I never saw them. I was traveling, or I left before they even woke up. And when I was back, it was just in time to put them to bed. There was nothing like self-care, all went out the window.
Yeah.
And at one point, I said, is this what I worked so hard to do? And I realized a change had to be made. So Nidhi and I made a very tough decision to become a single income family, and I started building a real estate portfolio. We had a few rentals by then, and we were making some money, and real estate was always really exciting to us. So started building a real estate portfolio, and we found this very specific strategy in real estate. It's known as the BRRRR strategy, BRRRR. And we started scaling this portfolio. We implemented our own frameworks on top of it because we worked in systems and processes. Both our backgrounds was in that area. So we started implementing that, and we started approaching it a little bit differently than everybody else. And we started scaling the portfolio fast. And so people started asking me how I was scaling it so fast. People who'd been in this industry for like 20, 30 years would say to me, like, I still have the same number of properties as you, and I've been doing this for 20 years, and you've only been at it for 2 years. What did you do differently? And so I started teaching people how to do it. And that was Open Spaces Women. So we've built a $10 million portfolio in the last 6 years. Niti and I are both financially free, full-time real estate investors. And then we also run the coaching arm of our business, where we work with investors closely on how to build their real estate portfolios.
I want to back up a little bit, because I think that there's a ton of value in even the conversation. Like, I want to dig into, you had said that like you guys had felt burnt out, or you had felt that like what you were doing in your corporate jobs weren't necessarily bringing you the fulfillment that you were looking to have in life. And real estate investment brought you that freedom and flexibility. Now, what I'm curious about is, because like a lot of people get into real estate, a lot of people become a real estate agent and they run a team in order for more freedom and flexibility. And then they quickly realize, oh my God, there's no freedom and there's no flexibility, because we have buyers and we have sellers that are calling us at 9 p.m. at night, and you're with your kids. And how do you recommend balancing? Because I'm guessing in the beginning, the real estate investment, like you were putting in the work, you were doing things, you were probably working late hours in order to really make a go at the real estate investment. Like, how does somebody who is a real estate agent or a real estate investor find the balance between wanting to build something big or wanting to even build something big for themselves? Because everyone's idea of big is different. How does somebody build something big for themselves while also maintaining the balance, especially if they have kids, they have, what does that look like? And how do you train even your investors to focus on the investments, scale the investment portfolio while also having a life?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because I think even as real estate investors or business owners, real estate agents, I think we can all fall in this trap of losing sight of why we're doing what we're doing.
Totally.
I personally think, though, that when you're a business owner, for example, a real estate agent, I think working for yourself for longer hours is still better than working for somebody else. Because if you're building something, you're spending that extra time that's taking you away from your family, you're building something for yourself, as opposed to helping somebody else build their company. So first of all, keeping that in mind. Second, I think the concept of work-life balance can really be misguiding for a lot of us, because we feel like it means that we have to give equal time to work, equal time to play, equal time to family. And I think balance means different things for different people. And it also evolves for you over time. Like when my kids were really, really little, I didn't want them away from me at all. I wanted them to be with me all the time. I've taken my kids with me to look at properties. I've driven around neighborhoods to get a better understanding while my kids were napping in the back seat of my car, in the car seat. Now that my kids are a little bit older, I don't see my time with them the same way I used to before. And so my time with them now is, I don't need to be with them 24/7. They're in school right now, right? It's a little bit different. So I feel like if we just kind of think about things right in that moment and try to achieve somebody else's objective of what balance means to them, it can really mislead us into feeling dissatisfied with what we have. Building a business is a privilege. I mean, we have work. We have people looking to us to work with us. I mean, that's a privilege. Having a family is a privilege. This is a beautiful life. We have to figure out how to balance it. And this balance is going to constantly shift. And it doesn't have to be equal. There will be some days where you will have all the time with your family And there'll be some days where you'll have to be like, hey, hustle and grind. That's the day today, right? And so I think if we give up this idea of everything has to be equal and, oh my God, I put so much work into it. Now I better spend time with my kids. Think of it as a privilege, and it just shifts your mindset on how you want to perceive what you're doing.
I love the perspective, because I think over the last year, not even year, over the last 6 months, I've started, you and I were in the green room chatting about just even like our change in business model over the last, month. And I think that there's this idea that if you take weekends off or you take a Sunday off, that there's one side of the camp that says that's bad. There's the other side of the camp that says, no, this is the way it should be. And it's like, you have to find what fuels you and what actually allows you to bring you fulfillment and joy. And I think that, like you mentioned, changes over time. Now, when I'm talking to real estate agents, or we're interviewing agents or top team leads, one of the things that consistently comes up around balance is just expectation setting with like clients. And when we're thinking about I was having a conversation with an agent the other day who was trying, we were listening to his call. I was doing a coaching call with him, and we were listening to his call. I'm like, this is an investor. I'm like, you have to approach this conversation so differently than a buyer or a seller. And they tried to use the same script that they would use on a buyer or seller, but it doesn't work because the investor had 16 properties already. He knew what he was looking for. He knew what he wanted. He just wanted somebody that was going to be reliable. So my question to you is, because you work with so many investors, and because the investor real estate relationship can either go really good or it can go really sour very quickly, what are some things that real estate investors look for in buying a property, or in, the people that you advise, the things that they look at, and how can real estate agents get their foot in the door in a market that is, like, in multiple markets, we're down 32% across the U.S. in transaction volume, but the transactions are still happening, on the investment side. But a lot of agents just don't know how to talk to investors. So can you give us some insight on how we talk to investors?
Yeah, that's such a great point, because 10 years ago, when I was a consumer buying a house, I would have approached it very differently than the way I buy investment properties. And when you're a buyer for a home, for a primary residence, or selling your primary residence, you're looking at that agent as someone who's going to guide you through the process, who's going to make you feel comfortable, who's going to have all the contacts that you need to be able to make it happen. And as agents, I can understand why you have to vet them a certain way to make sure that your time is being utilized.
Yeah, totally.
I think as investors, we work very differently with agents. We value things that are different than if I was buying a house for myself even now. As investors, especially seasoned investors, which seasoned investors could be an amazing client, because seasoned investors don't have, we're quick decision makers. We know how financing works. A lot of seasoned investors are comfortable buying properties sight unseen, right? You want certain things, your numbers work, and then boom, let's go. So there are so many advantages of working with seasoned investors, but also seasoned investors, their time is their biggest commodity. So if you're a real estate agent, if I'm calling a real estate agent, by the way, we with investors, we work on a script on the other side of the spectrum, right? Hey, how do you connect with a real estate agent, and how do you work with them, and how do you get to know them and build that relationship? So when investors are working with real estate agents, one, we look for someone who wants to build a long-term relationship, because once I have an understanding with an agent on what my strategy is and what kind of properties I'm looking for, and if the process works, I have no reason to go to another agent, and I'm buying properties all the time. So it can be repeat business, right? So as an investor, I want to work on that relationship up front a little bit, but I also want it quick. So my conversation is very punchy, right? I'm asking questions like, hey, so do you work with investors? Do you have experience working with investors? Are you comfortable with writing offers for distressed properties? Because one of the things we do is buy a lot of distressed properties, and some agents aren't in the business of showing distressed properties. They just are not comfortable with that, right? So are you comfortable with distressed properties? What's your time frame? Because I wouldn't vet a property as much as a buyer for a primary residence would, but I want to move fast. If I find a good investment deal, I want to move fast. The agents that I have loved working with the most will take my lead on what kind of property I'm looking for and quickly turn around exactly what I need and only what I need.
When you say turn around exactly what you need and only what you need, like what does that look like? Because when I was on this call the other day with one of our clients, they're like, like you listen to the call and like, it was short and punchy. They could have went a little deeper to figure out what were the motivation and the means of the actual investor to kind of like dig deeper to understand, to make sure we don't send them the wrong thing. Because I think that happens a lot where like you just mentioned, it's like, send me exactly what I need. Like how does a real estate agent ask the right questions that make sure the investors get exactly what they need and also make sure that like you cut out all the fluff?
Oh, I love that question. If I was an agent, I would ask like, hey, are you a local investor or are you based out of state? And if that investor is based out of state, you're going to be their boots on the ground. You're going to be their eyes and ears on the property. You could say, hey, things like, okay, so I'm comfortable doing a video walkthrough with you. I'm comfortable uploading pictures on Google Drive for you so you can take a look at it. That's number one. Second, I would find out how experienced they are, because brand new investors work completely differently than seasoned investors. Brand new investors may not know how they're going to fund that deal. So you want to ask them, if they're a brand new investor, you can say, hey, have you done any research on financing? How are you going to finance this deal? Are you using conventional financing? Are you using cash? Are you using hard money? Are you using commercial financing? There are multiple different things that an investor can do. And if you find an investor that knows what type of financing they're using, that investor is ready to move, right? So I would ask that question. And then I would ask questions around, we call it the property avatar, the specs of the property that they're after. Another term that people use in our space is the buy box. Like, what's your buy box? If you use terms like that, then the investor knows what you're talking about. Like, hey, are you looking for a 3-bed, 1-bath property? Are you looking for a multifamily property? Have you figured out your neighborhood, right? Are there specific zip codes that you're looking in? And some investors will even be more particular within a zip code. Like, hey, I don't want to go north of South Street, something like that. They're usually very particular because they have done that analysis and the numbers are different. Where the rents change sometimes completely when you cross a street. And then when I say exactly what I need, we usually ask agents to run comps for us. We say, hey, can you run some comps for me? Yes, boom, send them the comps. But that investor probably doesn't care about certain other things that a buyer would like. Hey, I just as a buyer for a primary residence, I appreciate information like, I just moved my sister into the same neighborhood. Her kids go to the school. It's a really nice street for kids. It's great as an investor because your tenants, you want them to be happy, but it's not as useful as the numbers.
So all in all, it sounds like the numbers and the accurate information is and fast information is what investors are looking for in order to move on a property, in order to make a decision. Now, how would you, because like obviously you bought property and you probably bought property with agents, I'm guessing, in the past. How do agents, like, say for example, like we used this example of this client the other day. So they got an inbound lead, and the inbound lead was an investor, 16 properties. And in those 16, he already had 16 properties, looking for another property. And the important criteria was it has to have a garage. It has to be near a university, which is obviously he wants to rent it out to people that go to university. But like that, we didn't ask that question, but like we just kind of assumed. But like when you have an inbound lead investor, which we get a lot when we're calling. What would you say that first interaction that real estate agent has with the investor in order to kick off what could be a very fruitful relationship for both the agent and the investor?
Oh, I love that question. That is such a great question. I think that some of the agents that I've worked with, that I've had consistent relationships for a long time, that I still work with, and our investors also repeatedly tell us, are the agents who either have some investment properties themselves, or they have worked with investors in the past. If you're a real estate agent, you have worked with an investor at some point, right? I would talk about your experience working with an investor, as opposed to, hey, we sell a lot of properties in the neighborhood. You can be like, no, I've worked with investors in the past. We work with investors all the time. If you tell me what your criteria is, I will make sure that whenever a property hits the market that fits your criteria, I will send it to you right away. And I think that really helps. I would also, one thing that I've noticed some agents will do that I would advise against is, there's a chance you know more or you know a better strategy for the investor. Like, hey, rentals are not working in that neighborhood right now. Flips are working in the neighborhood. I would say if you're talking to an investor that has 16 properties already, that is not the right pitch to them. Even though I think the intention behind talking about things that way is to be helpful. Like, I'm adding value by telling you that something else works better. But investors know what they want. I wouldn't try to poke holes in their strategy. That's their bread and butter. That's their business. Follow their lead and send them what they want, and share your experience working with investors. I also love real estate agents who get investment deals. Like, on the phone, if an agent told me like, oh, we have deals that come to my desk all the time, and I know how to vet deals for investors, yes, please send them my way.
I love that. And me and Sharon have had this conversation before, because, like, obviously, you know, with ARC and everything, he gets a ton of investment pitches, and there's one specific agent that always reaches out with the exact same script, where it's like, you know, hey, Sharon, can I tell you about a property in this location that'll actually pay you to own it? And that's literally the pitch that this real estate agent gives him every time he calls Sharon, and Sharon just loves it. He's like, tell me about it. I forget the guy's name, but it's super good. But talk to me a little bit about how, because I think so many real estate agents out there right now is like, they make a commission check, they spend it. They make a commission check, they spend it. They make a commission check, maybe they have it sitting aside. Like, what, they're constantly coming across deals, but yet so many real estate agents never invest in deals themselves, even though that they consistently see deals coming across their table. Like, if somebody wants to get into real estate investing, like, what are the steps that you took early on in your career in order to become financially free, but also in order to kind of build and grow your investment portfolio? What should real estate agents be considering right now in today's market?
Oh, I love that. Yes. I think what makes a great agent for investors is an agent that's an investor themselves. So even if you think of it as an add-on to your tool belt to be a great agent, I mean, investing is an amazing thing. But also, I think I was making an income before. I run an active business and I run an investment business. I run two different businesses. I'll tell you, the active business is great. It's really fun. It's great. I love it. You really get to work with people and make an impact on people directly. It's incredible. But at the end of the day, that business only runs while you're still working on it. Even if you're working very little, even if you're managing it, even if you take yourself out of the equation. So I would say, out of your income, take a small percent and set it aside to invest and to build generational wealth for your family. Because when we retire, what are we passing on to our kids at the end of the day? What are we passing further on? And rental properties are a great asset to pass on to the kids. They also give amazing tax benefits, right? So as your income as a real estate agent grows, your investment properties can offset some of that income and give you tax benefits at the same time. So lots of reasons to invest. I can go on and on. But to get started, I would say... Yeah, I would say we have a framework that we always talk about. We call it the ABLE framework. We say, like, define your property avatar. What kind of property are you going to go after? Pick something that is that fits the 3S criteria. Pick something small, simple, scalable, a property that is small. Don't try to get into a big, large deal if you're doing it alone for the very first time. Something that is simple. If you're taking on a project for renovation, then don't attack something that has a wall missing in the back, right? Pick a renovation project that is easy to handle and something that's scalable. You, as agents, you guys see all these deals, right, pop up in the area where you're licensed. You know what properties sell again and again, what properties come up on the market again and again. Pick something that's scalable. So if you try it once, you figure it out once, now you can repeat it again and again. And then, so that's the letter A stands for the avatar. B, put your blinders on. And as agents, I feel like, I mean, if it happens to us as investors, I'm sure it would happen more for agents because you see so many properties around you all the time, right?
Yeah.
So put your blinders on. Hey, this is my avatar. This is what I'm going to go after. This is my strategy. L stands for leap of faith. And I work with a lot of agents, actually. So I know that it's one thing to help someone else with their transaction, but it's a completely different thing to be in your own transaction, right? So take the leap of faith.
Yeah.
And then the last one is E, manage your expectations. And we always say that, for the great deals, the very first time, the deal may not work out. And so manage your expectations and keep putting in offers. Make sure the numbers work. So follow that process.
I wanna end out here with something that I think that what holds people back from starting, and whether it be a business, whether it be investing, whether it is really anything in life, it's fear. And it's fear of failing, or it's fear of being seen starting small. It's one of the two. Like, what advice do you have to a real estate agent who's like, I have a nest egg of money sitting over here to invest, but I've heard too many horror stories about deals going south. I've seen too many horror stories of people, losing a crap ton of money on an investment property. I've heard, people that don't want to deal with tenants because tenants can be terrible in certain states, certain markets. What advice do you have to the people that are afraid to start? And then what are some things that will help them take that leap of faith?
Oh, yeah. I think the big thing is when you want to build generational wealth, expecting that you're going to know everything going in is actually unfair to yourself, right? Like building generational wealth, most of us don't come from a lot of money. We don't have the right tools that were passed on. The Rockefellers pass on the right tools to their kids because they know what it takes to have generational wealth. My parents didn't know how to build generational wealth. How am I going to know how to do that, right? So we're all learning. And I think that when you think of all the setbacks that you're going to face as a real estate investor, think of it as the price you pay to get coached on building that generational wealth and breaking that cycle, the generational wealth cycle. And the other thing is, I love spreadsheets. I'm an engineer. I always, whenever I have fear of taking risk, I always build a spreadsheet and I divide up the risk in smaller buckets. So you're saying hey, what if there's a bad tenant? Put a dollar amount to it. If there's a bad tenant, how much money do you think you can lose? Put a dollar amount to it. And then have a dollar amount for every single item, and then decide, hey, do I want to get coached on this specific thing? Or do I want to take a risk on this specific thing? Or do I just want to, hey, you know what? This was in my head. This is actually not a big deal now that I've broken it down. And you can move on to the next thing. Break down the risks.
Break down the risk. Palak, I want to say thank you so much for just sharing so openly and so freely with our audience today. If somebody were to want to reach out to you, maybe they're an agent and they're like, hey, I want to do this investing thing, but I have zero idea where to start. Palak and I personally have, been in tons of masterminds. If you're considering learning how to invest, I would highly recommend you reach out. We both work with Sharon Srivatsa, and Palak's become a really good friend. But Palak, if somebody were want to reach out, learn a little bit more about investing, learn a little bit more about your program, where is the best place that we can send them?
My Instagram handle, which is where I hang out the most, is Open Spaces Women. DM me. Somebody from my team can help you. We have a lot of free resources. And just to add to that, build your business as an agent and use that to fuel generational wealth for your family. Like build more and more income and put it away for your kids.
I love that. I want to say thank you so much, Palak. This has been a ton of fun. And I want to say thank you for tuning into another episode of the Our Agent Podcast. If you got any value today out of learning how to invest for your real estate business, go to iTunes, leave us a review. We don't monetize this podcast. We just simply ask. The only thing we ask is leave us a review. It helps us reach more real estate agents in the market today. I want to say thank you for tuning in. We'll see you soon.